Alrighty, so we wanted to do more with the lamp, right? Now remember, if you want to rename stuff, all you have to do is double click on the actual geometry, right? Double click on it, because it's no longer NURBS curve, right? So we can call this lamp. There we go. And then hit enter. So just double click on it, very much like you would if Maya was what you were using. Alright, so at this point what we need to do is we need to figure out how to fill holes on the bottom here, right? And on the top. Now the bottom one we can just fill with the big N-gon, it should be fine. So we'll just go to 2 for edge mode, right? And remember, if you double left click, it'll select an edge loop. Now if you right click, it brings up all your options for your edge, right? And you see one of those is new face from edges. And that's how you can fill, right? We can do the same thing up here, right? So I can just double left click on this edge, and I could right click. So it brings up edge context menu, new face from edges, and there we go. Now in this case, I probably am fine with that bottom one there because it's going to be the bottom of the lamp, but I probably want the top of the lamp more rounded, right? We could have made the curve more extended to come up to here, but I figured it'd be cool to kind of just show you how you can even do this without a curve, right? If you really didn't like using curves in the screw modifier, you can actually use other things. So I'm going to go to 3 for face mode, right? 3 for faces. Left click on that face. And remember, one of the things you could do is extrude, right? Control E. And by default, it's set to extrude region, right? Freely or along an axis. By default, that axis is usually set to the average normal direction, which in this case is flat for this, right? So I just grab that kind of yellow guy instead of freely moving it to move him up. Now, of course, maybe I want to kind of inset this a little bit. So one of the things I could do is I could go to right click, right, inset, scale in a little bit there. And I could always hit W for move, right, to move it up a little bit. So we can kind of get this a little more rounded. I think I'll just do another inset faces. Remember, that's just right click, right? Remember, if you right click on your mouse, whatever selection type you're in, edge, vertex, or face, that'll bring up the options for that specific polygon. And these will change a little bit. You'll have extra ones depending on, like, say, I'm on face mode. If I had 2 polygons on different areas of the model, the bridge faces option will come up, right? So you won't always see every option. It depends on kind of the context of your selection as well. But it's always going to be relevant to faces. So of course I can inset faces again, and then move tool's still on, right? So one of the cool things about Blender is you can run a tool, and then once you kind of finish the tool, not all tools, but often many of the tools, it'll go back to kind of what was last on, which is the move tool. We can move that up a little bit. And in this case, I don't really want a giant N-gon on the top. So what I could do is I could just do one more kind of inset faces, like that. Now, one of the cool things we can do is I can switch to vertex mode, right? So this was all really just some extrusions, some moving, some inset faces, right? So you can extrude, you can inset, right? Remember, the inset tool is right there as well, but it's also in the right click, just like you have extrude options there as well. So keep that stuff in mind, right? But also, you saw I can move stuff, right? And of course, R for scale, middle mouse button, so you can do that stuff as well. But in this case, what I wanted to do is I wanted to hit 1, right? 1 for vertex. And you'll notice this takes that face and converts it to vertices. So Blender is actually quite good at converting from one selection type to another. So when you switch to vertices, you don't have to reselect those vertices. It'll already be selected because they were selected in face mode. So when you switch to these modes, it kind of already converts, which is really neat. Actually, it's one of the things I've totally loved in Blender. All packages have some way to convert, but Blender just kind of has that on by default, and it's kind of neat once you get used to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, because right-click brings up our context-sensitive menu, and you see there's vertex context menu, right? And you see this is all stuff related to vertices. You could do a new edge from face from vertices, so that's that fill hole there. Connect vertex pairs, we kind of saw that a little bit the other day. But you also see way down here we have merge vertices. Merge vertices. And you can just merge them at the center, and what that does is that welds all those vertices down to a single point right in the center. So it's kind of neat to know about that stuff. Maybe hit W to move it up a little bit, and there we go. So it's kind of really, really cool to kind of know those things. But you notice how I kind of did a couple of insets a little bit with movement, so I got this kind of rounded shape. Here I might want this to be a little more rounded. So remember, Alt-C is your loop cut, and I could left click right there. Now, something I want to show you guys about the loop cut option. You don't have to use this. You could just scale if you wanted to. But I've just left click to place an edge in there, and you'll see the options right here for loop cut slide. So I could click on that, and you can actually add number of cuts right there really easily. But also there's something called smoothness. And you see that this is kind of like that edge flow feature that multi-cut in Maya has, right? So you can kind of adjust that a little bit if you want to kind of play with kind of how much it pushes in or out. There's different kind of fall-offs if you want to. So it's kind of neat to know that number of cuts is right there, so you can add a bunch of them, right? But also the smoothness control can do some really neat stuff, right? So you've got some kind of cool little functionality there within the loop cut options if you want to take advantage of them, right? So I just wanted to get to show you guys a little bit about how loop cut can do some neat stuff, how we can merge vertices, and once again, how we can just use inset and fill faces, right? Fill new faces from edges. So I kind of just want to get you guys to see that a little bit. And now you can kind of see we've got a fully kind of closed up and sewn up lamp, right? It's fully enclosed now. If I wanted to, I could do further modeling, right? We don't have to be done with this lamp exactly now. We can go back and we could shape and grab edge loops if we wanted to, right? I can go 2 for edge, double left click, right? And I could hit R for scale to scale that in a little bit because maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I want to add this after the fact and I've already kind of closed everything down. So I could scale that in. Control B for bevel, right? Middle mouse drag. If you hold down S middle mouse button while that's still on, you could add your segments right there, right? Of course, those controls are right there as well. So I could always go in and add a little bit more if I wanted to, right? Control B to bevel that a little bit. Remember, you don't even have to drop the bevel tool. I can just double left click and boom. And so you see how I can go in here and I could, even after you've done that revolve, if you decide that screw modifier, if you decide you want more in there, you could put more in there, right? So it's kind of one of those things where don't feel like you have to be done, right? If you need a little more, you can add a little more. And it could be through loop cuts, right? It could be through bevels. And it's great to see some of those options you have with those. But of course, we have our ability to do new face from edges. And even things like merge vertices. One of the things you can also do is maybe you wanted this lamp to have a little bit of ridging down here, right? So one of the things I could do is I can go 3 for face mode, right? So 3 for faces. And I could easily just grab, say that face, and then shift click here. There is a tool in select menu in select link called shortest path, right? I've set it to Z. By default, it doesn't actually have a quick key, I believe. So you might have to set your own. But if I hit Z, that'll do shortest path. I can then shift left click there, shift left click Z, and it does a little range there. Shift left click, and I'm just doing that select linked shortest path. So once you start to get and spend more time with all these tools, you actually have some pretty excellent selection tools in Blender. Of course, if you really wanted to, you could switch to circle select, right? It isn't here. Q will toggle through, right? That's rectangle select. That's the one where you just box select. That one's circle select. So if you hold down Shift, left click drag, you can just kind of do this pretty quick also. So remember, you have Control will deselect, right? Although Shift will deselect also oftentimes. Although sometimes not super predictably, so I like Control better. But remember, you have that shortest path if you want to. But you also have your circle select, right? That one right there, circle select. And these are great options for you to be able to grab stuff. In this case, what I want to do is I want to inset these in a little bit. So I can right click, inset faces, and you see that kind of brings them in a little bit. And then I can right click, extrude faces along normal, right? So I'm taking advantage of that right click. That right click goes into face context menu, right? And that's where your inset is. But also extrude faces along normals, right? So you don't always have to do the regular extrude faces we've used, but you can do extrude faces along normals. What that does, when I click on that, you see how we kind of move our cursors in or out? And you'll notice what it does is it actually moves, extrudes it, right? There's new geometry being created. but it moves those faces along all of their individual normal directions. So you can kind of push those in to create a little bit of ridging if you want to. And that creates a kind of neat little inset. Remember, normal direction, though, is kind of the direction the polygon is facing. So, this guy went in this way, this guy went in that way, that guy went in that way, and all of them. So when you actually get to see kind of some of this greater functionality, but that's just extrude, we're just using faces along normals, you see how really excellent Blender's workflow is at doing a lot of these things nowadays, right? It's actually a pretty awesome tool set for adjusting and controlling these things. So this is the kind of neat little stuff that you can do to kind of modify your lamp a little bit more. If you feel like after you've done the revolve and convert to mesh, you're like, oh man, I really wanted a little more there. Add some loop cuts, right? You can just do regular extrusions and insets to create more shape. So you can get most of it this way, and then if you want to add stuff later on, just use your regular loop cuts, bevels, extrusion, inset to create those. But now, of course, we have our options for new faces from selection, things like that. Merge, right? So mesh menu has, vertex menu has usually your new face from vertices there. It'll often have your merge features there as well. So just keep in mind that those kind of features are there often in these menus. Just kind of looking for them. You'll see if mesh menu has merge here, right? So some of these things are kind of in some of these other areas. That's why I kind of like to use right click, because you get more specific that stuff right there without having to go to a menu, which can be useful. All right. So just wanted to kind of get you guys just seeing these tools in some different contexts, right? Adding a little bit more to your arsenal for how you would model your lamp. All right, so that'll be a great place, I think, to stop for that video.